Welcome back to Heartfelt Awakening Radio. I am your host, Denny Van. I help you train your brain to choose wellness. And today's topic comes up as several clients have asked about the term spiritual bypassing and what it means. So, welcome back. And if you're new to Heartfelt Awakening Radio, welcome. In today's topic, spiritual bypassing, you can do a Google search on what is spiritual bypassing, just like I did. And I learned that it was a term coined in the 1980s by a psychotherapist and Buddhist teacher, John Wellwood. And he says that spiritual bypass or spiritual bypassing is a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. So we all have unresolved emotional issues, maybe even psychological wounds, but unfinished developmental tasks. That could mean something at 12-year-old was an emotional trauma, and you weren't able to get past that emotional trauma. So you're kind of at the stage of an emotional 12-year-old, even though you could be in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So there's an unresolved emotional developmental trauma. You have to get through that. Otherwise, you stay at that age, so to speak, developmentally. So, and people ask me, what is this spiritual bypassing? Another term you may hear is spiritual gaslighting. And, there's so many signs of this and behavior manifestations of this. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or anything. It's learned behavior. And we may have seen, a family member who was really hurt and they kind of sugarcoated it. Even though it was an uncomfortable experience, they just sugarcoated it and swept it under the rug, right? So they didn't face it. They didn't take a look at it. They didn't go through the process and come out the other end. Instead, they just buried it. And this burying process could create detachment from it until it comes into your experience again, which triggers the past behavior. And so this past behavior will sometimes dictate our current behavior in the current situation that we're in. And so, as a reverend of over 30 years, I prayed about this and, I said, what am I going to say in this podcast? And you know what I realized the oldest form of spiritual bypassing is? In the Bible, couple of areas is where Adam blamed Eve for eating of the sacred fruit. So there was blame involved. He didn't take responsibility for looking at the situation. Instead, he blamed the person who offered it to him, right? So another old spiritual bypassing is the devil made me do it. So this is a tendency within our human nature. It is a tendency to use something, and usually it's blaming or some kind of spiritual bypassing, so that we're avoiding the feelings and then we just bury it again. We may even become overly idealistic, and instead of looking at our money issues, we're just saying, I have $1 million in my account. I have $1 million in my account. I have $1 million in my account. And in the meantime, your life experiences is showing you the exact opposite, and you're not dealing with the stuff that's coming up that's preventing you from having $1 million in your account, right? So this is a form of spiritual bypassing and spiritual gaslighting, because you telling yourself you have $1 million, your unconscious, subconscious, the rest of you knows it's a complete lie. And it brings up other stuff. It brings up unresolved issues. So what we do, one way that we can re-trigger ourselves is by telling the traumatic story over again. As someone who teaches your brain how to choose wellness, We don't want that coming up in your nervous system again, because we don't want it grounding in your nervous system, making those neurological pathways even deeper to the behaviors of what brought up that trauma. So, what we do instead is we make the subjective objective. So, instead of avoiding your feelings of anger, or sweeping under the rug, or detaching yourself, this requires a little bit of awareness. The moment you become aware you are now avoiding feelings of anger, our tendency is to say, I am angry. This is subjective. What we want you to do is become objective. And we've talked about this before. Use the pain scale. Science uses it. It's an excellent tool to shift you from the perspective of subjective, I am angry and I'm going to bury this down because I'm going to avoid these feelings of anger. Instead of doing that, make it objective. I am angry, and you don't want to feel those feelings, right? But you got to look at it somehow. And by switching to objective, putting it on this pain scale, you say, I am feeling anger, and it's on the pain scale of 8, 9, or 10, 10 being the absolute worst, where 0 is no pain at all. So what you just did is you become aware of the anger. Number one, you're training your awareness of when you're doing it. You got to catch yourself doing it. And you're using a tool to make the subjective, I am angry, I don't want to feel this, I'm going to bury it under the rug, to being objective. It's a 7 on the pain scale, and it's causing pain in my life. It's causing my body to be tight. It's wanting me to avoid. It's wanting me to crawl into a hole and die. Okay, so you just made it objective. This is powerful. This is making a shift in your nervous system from repeating old habits, old patterns, old behaviors, to stop, now creating space. Now, here is where you get to choose. This is where you get to choose to either go back to old behaviors and react, do your old thing, avoid those feelings of anger or whatever it is, to now it's objective. Oh, wow, this is a 7. This may be even higher on the pain scale. Look what it's doing to my life. Now, what do I do about it? Now, what do I do about it? And this is what we do, is we teach you how to integrate the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of this that just showed up, this behavior that you just became aware of. We train your wellness team how to integrate that while releasing what no longer serves. And usually what no longer serves are your old patterns, old behaviors, programmed, learned behaviors, right? It no longer serves you because now you're aware. And in this space of awareness, this is where you can choose which direction you want to go in. And this is life changing and life transforming. So give it a try. Make the subjective objective and watch what happens. So with that, that's what spiritual bypassing is. The devil made me do it. It's blaming something else other than looking at what just happened, integrating what just happened, and using that instead of a stumbling block and stumbling over it and creating bad choices or bad reactions, using it as a stepping stone to move you forward closer to your goals and your desires. So with that, I want to hear from you, and do be sure to like, subscribe, and do all the bells and whistles, because that really helps us get our message out there to more people. And I do want to hear from you. What did you love about this? And what would you love more of? And in the meantime, keep being amazing.